a supposed comet is catching the attention of some of the nation's most renowned scientists.
What you're looking at is the latest image of the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas, captured by a Chinese space telescope. The light of 3I Atlas doesn't sparkle like a comet. It pulses, slow, steady, and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something alive. Inside that pulse, scientists have detected traces of organic molecules, the same fundamental components that form DNA. It's a sign of life. Now, one question remains. What is 3I Atlas carrying, and why is it approaching Earth? On July 1, 2025, the Purple Mountain Observatory in Nanjing, China, released a series of images that shocked the scientific world. Through the dense field of stars, a strange object appeared, moving at a speed that did not match any known asteroid or comet. At first, the data looked like a tracking error, but when 3 separate observation systems confirmed the same coordinates, it became clear that something extraordinary had entered our solar system. The object was soon named 3I Atlas, marking it as the third interstellar visitor ever recorded after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. But unlike those two, which simply passed through the solar system, this one behaved differently. Its light was not random or scattered. It pulsed with a rhythm so precise that scientists compared it to a living heartbeat. The 500-meter aperture spherical telescope, or FAST, detected a repeating thermal signal of exactly 0.59 Hz. That means it released a burst of heat every 1.7 seconds. Slow, steady, and impossibly consistent for a natural body. The Chinese research team immediately ruled out reflection or rotation as a cause. Instead, they suggested the energy came from within, as if the object was regulating its own temperature. When NASA and the European Space Agency received the same data, they hesitated to confirm the discovery. Some believed it was an instrumental glitch or the result of interference from Earth's atmosphere. However, after China verified the readings through 3 different observatories, even skeptics had to admit that the object was emitting its own internal energy. Images taken by the Purple Mountain Telescope revealed a dim halo surrounding the core. This faint glow expanded and contracted in sync with each pulse, almost like a biological signal. Whenever the object shifted its path, the glow intensified, suggesting a connection between its movement and the energy cycle inside it. Nothing like this had ever been seen before, not in comets, asteroids, or even interstellar dust clouds. Astronomers began to wonder if they were witnessing the first evidence of a non-natural interstellar traveler. Its motion across the sky showed purpose, not randomness. Even the pattern of light from its tail seemed deliberate, forming symmetrical waves as it passed through cosmic dust. The deeper scientists looked, the more they felt that this object might be more than rock and ice. As data continued to pour in, the rhythm of 3I Atlas remained unchanged, calm, consistent, and eerily alive. Across observatories worldwide, experts struggled to describe what they were seeing. Was this a natural anomaly that simply mimicked life, or something built to carry it? And if 3I Atlas truly has a heartbeat, what exactly is beating inside it? What made 3I Atlas different was not where it came from, but how its energy behaved over time. Thermal readings from separate observatories lined up to show 2 locked rhythms, one short cycle of about 1.7 seconds and one long cycle close to 9 hours. Those cycles did not drift with distance, speed, or background temperature, and they stayed phase-true across nights of observation. The core sat in a narrow band between roughly 200 and 250 Kelvin, which is cold for life as we know it, yet the numbers hardly moved. Such stability hinted at active control because passive objects usually wander with sunlight, shadow, and rotation. Analysts measured the ratio between the peak and the valley of each pulse and found it constant, which suggested a governor rather than a leak. In the light curves, the bright peaks arrived in lockstep with the thermal peaks, and the tiny delay between them stayed the same every cycle. That fixed delay implied a repeatable process inside the object, like charge then release, rather than random surface flares. Fourier analysis revealed clean, narrow lines with very little noise around the main tones, and their harmonics matched simple integer multiples. Natural vents tend to smear frequencies, but these lines were thin and persistent, which is a classic sign of an ordered system. When researchers plotted the energy budget, they saw more power leaving in the infrared than sunlight alone could explain at that distance. To make the numbers work, something inside had to store and release energy in a controlled pattern. Teams proposed several mechanisms that could run in deep cold, including slow redox chemistry in brines, radiolysis-driven charge pumps, and lattice reactions in exotic ices. Each idea explained part of the behavior, yet none covered all three anchors at once: fixed dual cycles, constant phase delay, and excess radiative output. A second check focused on emissivity, and the result was strange, because different wavelengths rose and fell together instead of chasing one another. That kind of synchronized rise is rare, and it often means a single driver is moving many parts at once. Engineers then tested a systems model in which a central regulator times the releases, and the fit improved sharply over any random model. Some called the pattern a photonic biosignature, a label for light that carries timing like living processes, although the term does not prove biology. Others argued it could be an artifact of advanced design, since machines can also hold a pulse and keep it clean. No one could deny that the signal was disciplined because the quality factor stayed high even when dust and glare should have blurred it. In simple words, 3i Atlas did not just glow, it kept time. And when something keeps time, we have to ask whether it is waiting for a cue. If there is a cue, what happens when humanity sends one first? For decades, humans have dreamed of sending a message into the stars. But in August 2025, that dream turned into something far stranger. At exactly 1:32 a.m. UTC on August 3rd, China's Deep Space Network in Xinjiang sent a carefully coded radio signal toward the interstellar object known as 3i Atlas. The message wasn't random. It was built around prime numbers, binary sequences, and harmonic tones, a pattern that any intelligent species should recognize as mathematical and deliberate. The signal lasted 12 minutes, rising in frequency with each transmission before the antennas went silent. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. No echo, no distortion, no reply of any kind. Then, exactly 58 minutes later, every telescope aimed at 3i Atlas recorded a sudden surge of energy. Its brightness doubled for less than a second, and its motion shifted by a measurable fraction. The change was small, almost invisible to the eye, but the timing was perfect, too perfect to be coincidence. Every model confirmed the same result. The shift happened precisely when a return signal would have arrived if something had received the message and decided to respond. It didn't speak, it moved. The event sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Engineers rechecked the data for errors, but the readings were clean. It wasn't static interference or solar reflection. It was a deliberate burst of energy, the kind that requires timing, awareness, and intent. One astrophysicist described it as a nod without words, a physical acknowledgement rather than a broadcast. The term that followed quickly entered the scientific vocabulary: conscious non-communication. It describes an answer that avoids direct contact but still shows understanding, like hearing your name in a crowd and turning your head instead of speaking. The silence that followed became even louder than the signal itself. For the first time, humanity might have been heard by something not of this world, and that something had chosen not to talk. Researchers tried again a week later, transmitting a mirrored version of the message with inverted timing, but there was no response at all. The pulse continued as before, steady and unbroken, as if the object had already said all it needed to say. Some believed 3I Atlas was following a protocol, avoiding interference until certain conditions were met. Others suggested it was testing us, observing how we reacted to its quiet acknowledgement, but one question refused to fade. If it truly heard us and chose silence, what does that say about the intelligence that hides within the void? When the James Webb Space Telescope turned its sensors toward 3I Atlas, what it saw didn't belong to any ordinary comet. The light spectrum coming from the object revealed something that no one expected: traces of carbon dioxide, water vapor, ammonia, and formaldehyde, but also faint signatures of amino acids. Those are the very molecules that form proteins and ultimately life itself. The discovery came from a routine spectrographic pass, but when analysts compared the readings to known cosmic objects, the ratios were completely wrong. In most comets, water dominates, with a CO2 to H2O ratio below 0.5. 3I Atlas, however, showed the opposite. Carbon-based compounds were everywhere, more than 4 times higher than usual, suggesting a deliberate chemical balance rather than a random one. Even stranger, Webb detected long carbon-nitrogen chains, molecular sequences eerily similar to DNA fragments. They weren't exact copies, but the repeating pattern of atoms was too structured to be coincidence. Each chain contained repeating triplets of carbon, nitrogen, and hydrogen spaced at uniform intervals, mimicking the way genetic information is stored in nucleic acids. Chinese researchers called it cryogenic metabolism, a process that could theoretically let chemical reactions happen in near-freezing conditions. In this theory, liquid brine hidden deep within the object might serve as a slow-reacting medium, allowing organic materials to combine over centuries. That meant 3I Atlas wasn't just carrying biological materials, it might be preserving them. The object could act like a capsule, protecting the essential seeds of life as it traveled across the void. If this idea was true, it would make 3I Atlas the first known example of directed panspermia, a vessel designed to spread life between worlds. But not everyone agreed. A smaller group of scientists argued that the biological pattern was camouflage, a natural trick to confuse observation instruments. They believed the molecule chains might be artificial reflections, signals built to look like life to disguise the object's true composition. However, the evidence grew harder to deny when Webb detected thin trails of organic dust streaming from the object, drifting in a narrow arc that pointed straight toward the inner solar system. These microscopic particles weren't random. Their chemical structure matched the same carbon-nitrogen pattern seen in the main body, almost as if 3I Atlas was releasing them on purpose. If these were natural emissions, they should scatter in all directions, but the particles moved in formation, steady and aligned. That precision hinted at an active mechanism, one capable of choosing where to send its material. The possibility was staggering. Could the object be carrying dormant biological templates, waiting for a planet like Earth to receive them? Or were those patterns just an imitation, designed to look alive so we would keep watching? By late September 2025, something strange began to happen on Earth. At first, it was only noticed by a few monitoring stations in South America and Asia, tiny, rhythmic fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field that matched the timing of 3I Atlas's internal pulse. Each wave arrived exactly when the object's light intensity peaked, separated by the same intervals measured in space. It was as if our planet's own magnetic field was breathing in sync with something millions of miles away. Scientists at geomagnetic labs checked their instruments repeatedly, suspecting a software error, but the results remained the same. The readings came from multiple continents and matched perfectly across independent observatories. Then, satellites in low orbit began reporting short, repeating signal distortions. These anomalies weren't random static or cosmic interference. They were synchronized with 3I Atlas's pulse cycle down to a fraction of a second. The pattern looked like a handshake, a call and acknowledgement, what engineers call a magnetic handshake. It was as if the object was scanning the Earth, sending out invisible waves and waiting for the planet to respond. Dr. Xian Wu, a physicist from the Chinese Space Weather Agency, described it simply: "We're not being disturbed, we're being studied." Every change in 3I Atlas's orientation produced a ripple across the magnetosphere. Each shift triggered a gentle pulse in the upper atmosphere, like a quiet echo traveling through invisible wires that wrap around the planet. For the first time in recorded history, Earth was part of a conversation it didn't start. The pulses didn't cause damage or energy spikes, but they showed awareness, as though something out there had mapped the invisible shape of our planet. European monitoring arrays soon joined the analysis and confirmed that the frequency of the disturbances was non-random. The data showed a repeating triplet pattern, 3 identical bursts separated by equal intervals, repeated 3 times before silence. In data communication, that structure means one thing: confirmation of receipt. The message was clear. 3I Atlas was listening, not talking. Some scientists speculated that the object was using the magnetic field as a probe, like sonar in water, to study how Earth responds to external signals. Others believed the pulses were part of a biological or artificial feedback loop, an exchange of information rather than energy. The more the planet pulsed back, the stronger the object's emissions became, as if it was learning. Governments grew uneasy, but there was no way to stop the interaction without shutting down every satellite in orbit. And so, humanity kept watching and listening. If the Earth was being scanned, then perhaps the next question wasn't what it wanted, but why it had chosen now to reach out. When the data became too precise, the silence began. By early October 2025, the major space agencies, NASA, ESA, and CNSA, all locked their public data portals without warning. Files that had been updated daily suddenly stopped. Researchers who tried to access telemetry logs or observation archives were met with access denied notices. Officially, the reason was system maintenance, but internal memos told a different story. The networks that once connected universities and observatories worldwide were moved onto classified military channels. In less than 48 hours, all information about 3I Atlas vanished from open access. The few remaining civilian observatories began to notice something else even more disturbing. Every time they aimed their sensors at 3I Atlas, their readings echoed back, like a reflection. The object wasn't just emitting light, it was returning modified versions of the signals sent toward it. The patterns were slightly altered, as if it was mimicking or analyzing the very instruments used to study it. It was learning how we observe. Multiple independent groups confirmed this effect, noting small phase delays that couldn't be explained by distance alone. Some physicists compared it to a mirror that adjusts its reflection to test whoever is watching. The discovery spread quickly across private research forums, but within days, those discussions were deleted, and accounts posting the data were suspended. That was when the rumor began about a secret international agreement called the Biological Protection Protocol 7b. According to leaked correspondence, this clause allows global space agencies to restrict data that might contain potential biohazards or unknown living systems. In short, if 3I Atlas was carrying something biological, the information could be classified immediately under that rule. Official spokespeople avoided questions, saying only that the data was under review for planetary protection. For the public, it looked like coordinated silence. The last unfiltered footage came from a small Chilean observatory that uploaded its images on October 12th. In those frames, the object appeared brighter than ever, surrounded by a faint halo of shifting light that flickered like a coded pattern. Then, one night later, it was gone. No new images, no new data, and no public explanation. Across the world, people began to speculate. Had 3I Atlas done something that governments couldn't reveal, or had they seen something they weren't ready to explain? Weeks after 3I Atlas disappeared from official observation, the story was supposed to be over. But on the cold night of November 2nd, telescopes in Chile and South Africa picked up something small drifting through the same patch of sky. It wasn't bright or fast, but its behavior immediately caught attention. The object pulsed faintly, just like 3I Atlas had, following the same rhythmic pattern, but slower, steadier, and more precise. Astronomers began calling it the Atlas fragment, a possible remnant or module separated from the main body before its final acceleration. At first, many believed it was just leftover debris, a chunk of ice or rock broken off by solar radiation. But that explanation fell apart within hours. Infrared sensors detected no heat, no reflective temperature, and no signs of sublimation. The fragment didn't behave like any natural material. Its reflection was geometric, with angles that stayed constant no matter how the viewing position changed. It was reflecting light at a fixed angle, as if its surface were engineered to redirect energy in a controlled way. When high-resolution imaging from the European Southern Observatory came in, the details stunned everyone. The object had flat planes and sharp edges forming near-perfect symmetry, something nature almost never creates on such a small scale. Its surface smoothness was beyond comprehension, polished at the molecular level, far smoother than any human-made metal mirror. Spectral readings revealed a composition that didn't match any known element or alloy. The fragment was tiny, barely a few hundred meters wide, yet its density suggested a mass several times greater than any known asteroid of that size. The math implied something far more compact, possibly a hyperdense composite or an unknown exotic material. That alone would make it one of the strangest objects ever recorded. But then came the anomaly that made scientists lose sleep. When radar signals were sent toward it, the return pulse came back, delayed by exactly 3.14 seconds. At first, everyone thought it was a technical glitch or interference from solar radiation, but after multiple tests across different observatories, the delay remained perfectly consistent. 3.14, the number pi. Too exact, too symbolic, too deliberate to be a coincidence. Half the community dismissed it as an electronic artifact, while the rest couldn't shake the feeling that the delay was intentional. Dr. Elisa Brandt from ESA described it as communication through math, the only language that needs no translation. If the fragment truly responded with a mathematical constant, it meant it was aware of being observed. And if that was true, then maybe 3I Atlas didn't just vanish. It left something behind, something meant to continue the conversation. It began with a flash, not an explosion, but a pulse of light so precise that it felt deliberate. For less than 3 seconds, the James Webb Space Telescope recorded 6 radiant arcs forming a perfect hexagon around 3I Atlas. Then the light vanished, leaving the instrument staring into silence. No trail of dust, no fading glow, only a clean void where something enormous had just been. At first, scientists thought it was a system glitch, a frame lost in transmission, but when data from other observatories matched perfectly, they realized it was real. Whatever 3I Atlas had done, it wasn't destruction, it was departure. The gravitational field around its last known position showed a faint distortion, a kind of ripple that shouldn't exist unless the object had changed its physical state. Some called it a phase shift, a moment when matter stops behaving like matter and becomes something else entirely. Seconds later, distant sensors picked up a new signal, a faint movement accelerating toward the outer solar system at an impossible precision. The path it followed cut directly across two worlds that had long fascinated scientists, Europa and Enceladus, the icy moons that hide vast underground oceans. Both are rich in organic material. Both could sustain life. If 3I Atlas carried biological cargo, this was no random trajectory. It was a choice, an ancient instinct to return to the water, to the places where life can begin again. When researchers checked historical data, they found quiet echoes of similar gravitational ripples, one in 1987, another in 1998, and one more in 2013. Each lined up with the same celestial corridor 3I Atlas had just followed. Maybe this wasn't the first visit. Maybe it was the continuation of something far older, a cycle of observation repeating through time. And if that's true, then 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor. It's a messenger returning to witness what its creation has become. The story of 3I Atlas has changed everything we thought we knew about the universe. It arrived as a faint pulse of light, but left behind a trail of questions that no telescope can answer. It behaved like something alive, carried the chemical code of DNA, and responded with silence that felt intelligent. Then, just as mysteriously as it appeared, it vanished, leaving fragments, patterns, and echoes that suggest purpose. Was it a messenger, a seed, or a mirror showing us what we might one day become? If 3I Atlas truly carries the blueprint of life, then maybe the question is no longer where it came from, but when it will return and what it will bring with it next.